Jackson, an alpha of considerable influence, found himself inexplicably drawn to Ethan. He harbored a firm conviction that Ethan was a subtle, clever Omega in disguise, despite Ethan's towering presence and unassuming demeanor. Jackson couldn't fathom why anyone would perceive Ethan, who stood at a lean 6'1", as anything other than a beta if not an alpha. So, when Jackson leaned casually against his polished sports car, a colossal bouquet of crimson roses clutched in his arm, drawing a small crowd of onlookers armed with phone cameras, he felt a surge of confident anticipation. His phone, buzzing persistently on his desk, vibrated like a frantic insect. He didn't need to check to know the company's unofficial chat groups were likely ablaze with speculation. He imagined the messages flashing. Is that the CEO's son downstairs? And wait, isn't he looking towards the tech department? Jackson observed Ethan through the large glass panes of the office tower. He watched Ethan inhale deeply, a visible effort to calm himself before stepping out. Jackson thought of it as a fascinating game. A delectable challenge had presented itself, and he was ready to claim his prize. The moment Ethan emerged, Jackson swiftly approached, placing the overwhelming bundle of roses into Ethan's arms with an almost forceful grace. Jackson's voice dropped, a low murmur meant only for Ethan, suggesting an intimacy they hadn't yet shared. Ethan, cradling the roses that nearly obscured his face, perfectly conveyed a delicate blend of astonishment and uncertainty. It was precisely the reaction Jackson had expected from an Omega caught off guard by an overt declaration. Ethan asked what the grand gesture was for. Jackson leaned closer, diminishing the space between them until he could discern each fine line of Ethan's eyelashes, ensuring no one else could overhear their exchange. He dismissed Ethan's pretense, stating that he was tired of the evasion. Jackson's eyes glinted with unshakable conviction, much like a hunter who had cornered his prey. He declared that Ethan's charade was over, that he knew Ethan's secret. The revelation of his secret almost made Ethan laugh aloud. Jackson leaned in, whispering into Ethan's ear that he should become Jackson's Omega. Jackson promised to mark him, protect him, and provide him with everything he desired. Ethan lowered his gaze to the vibrant roses in his arms, his fingertips brushing the dewy petals. He spoke with a feigned tremor of apprehension, mentioning the number of people watching and suggesting they discuss the matter elsewhere. This reaction seemed to entirely align with Jackson's expectations. The thrill of such control visibly pleased the alpha. Jackson's lips curved into a satisfied smile as he reached out to caress Ethan's hair. Ethan subtly shifted, avoiding the touch, leaving Jackson's hand suspended mid-air. For a brief moment, Jackson's expression faltered, but he quickly recovered, offering a polished smile. He agreed, telling Ethan to get in the car. Jackson held the car door open, an act of impeccable courtesy, yet his gaze, heavy and possessive, felt like a physical weight, sizing up a prize on the verge of capture. Once seated, Jackson leaned back comfortably, appearing entirely at ease, as if the unfolding events were precisely orchestrated. He remarked that they were alone now and inquired if Ethan was ready to give him an answer. Ethan, for the first time, addressed Jackson by his given name, asking if he truly believed he knew Ethan's secret. Jackson's confidence was palpable. He claimed he knew Ethan was an alluring, tricky individual who yearned to be conquered. Ethan's smile was not one of shyness or embarrassment, as Jackson might have imagined, but rather the silent amusement of someone hearing a truly ridiculous joke. Ethan allowed a faint, almost imperceptible hint of his suppressed aura to escape. He typically preferred not to use his inherent presence to overwhelm others, considering it unrefined, but with Jackson, he found an undeniable urge to assert his dominance. In that fleeting moment, Jackson's composed demeanor fractured. His relaxed posture stiffened instantly. He went from being a poised predator to the one unexpectedly under scrutiny. Jackson sensed a flicker of confusion in his eyes, a primal alarm in an individual accustomed to being in control, confronting something beyond his understanding. Ethan, however, quickly reined in his aura, making the shift so swift that Jackson might have dismissed the momentary imbalance as a trick of his own mind. Jackson frowned, his gaze fixed on Ethan, searching for a tell. Ethan innocently met his stare, then smoothly drained his glass, the movement deliberate and unhurried. Perhaps the decisive action clashed with Jackson's perception of a delicate omega, because the confusion in his eyes deepened. The initial spark of caution was swiftly overshadowed by a more potent desire to dominate. Jackson likely assumed it was an omega's subtle play, a calculated manipulation to enhance the chase. Jackson spoke, resuming his practiced air of suave confidence. He simply found Ethan more intriguing than he had anticipated. Ethan's eyes curved upward in a genuine, though carefully veiled, smile as he accepted the compliment. He found Jackson's deeply ingrained preconception amusing, almost delightful. The more Jackson convinced himself he was the hunter in this romantic game, the deeper he would stumble into Ethan's meticulously laid trap. Jackson, seemingly genuinely captivated, began a pursuit unlike his usual rapid conquests. He dedicated an unprecedented level of patience, showering Ethan with daily roses, frequent dinner invitations, and even delivering items Ethan had casually admired the previous day. He was like a peacock in full display, constructing a web of grand gestures that he believed would be impossible to resist. Ethan, of course, never refused. He graciously accepted every gift, punctually arrived at every dinner, offered a soft thank you when Jackson opened the car door, and feigned a touch of shyness when Jackson drew near. He embodied the perfect omega, playing along with every expectation, meeting every anticipated reaction. Yet, on occasion, Ethan would subtly tug at Jackson's emotional threads. Alphas, he knew, often grew complacent with too much ease. The more he acquiesced, the more comfortable Jackson became. So, Ethan would periodically create a minor disruption, ensuring Jackson's heart never quite settled. The elusive, the almost attainable, always proved more maddeningly alluring. Jackson eventually seemed to believe everything was progressing perfectly. The unspoken tension had built sufficiently, and the time and effort he'd invested far exceeded his initial projections. One evening, after dropping Ethan off at his apartment, Jackson turned in his seat, his gaze unwavering. He remarked that after so many days of pursuit, Ethan ought to show some sign of reciprocation. This wasn't a question, Ethan knew. Jackson sought tangible proof that his efforts had yielded results, like a reward after a prolonged effort. Ethan turned to face him, the streetlights outside casting long, indistinct shadows. The night was quiet, save for the distant hum of the city. The moon was a luminous orb, and the atmosphere felt perfectly charged. Ethan remained silent, leaning slowly toward Jackson. He heard Jackson's breath catch, and saw the anticipated flicker of triumph in those usually calculating eyes. Jackson likely anticipated a kiss. However, just an inch from Jackson's lips, Ethan paused. His gaze drifted past Jackson's slightly parted mouth, settling firmly on his eyes. He repeated the word, reciprocation. He then calmly asked if Jackson's pursuit was merely for a display of gratitude. With that single sentence, Ethan skillfully seized back control. Jackson froze, his confident mask cracking slightly. The expected soft kiss hadn't materialized, replaced by a disconcerting sense of unpredictability. Ethan leaned back into his seat, reestablishing a comfortable distance. His voice regained its usual gentle tone. He expressed his enjoyment of their current interactions, suggesting that some things were better left to unfold naturally. Ethan paused deliberately, his gaze once more sweeping over Jackson's lips. He added that things obtained too quickly often lost their appeal. He was sure Jackson, like him, preferred a more challenging, more exciting pursuit. Jackson studied him intently. He didn't seem angry. Instead, a low chuckle escaped him, hinting at the pleasure of encountering a true adversary. Jackson shook his head, as if searching for adequate words. He conceded, "All right, as you wish. We'll let things happen naturally." He then opened the car door for Ethan, watching him enter the apartment building. Ethan knew Jackson would replay that moment in his mind, the tantalizing proximity that hadn't quite culminated, the lingering implications of Ethan's words. Jackson's heart, which had been poised for satisfaction, now remained suspended, pulled by Ethan's carefully manipulated threads towards an even more intriguing future. Ethan was perfectly content to be the one pulling those threads. Ethan and Jackson's interactions became frequent, so much so that Jackson had begun to subconsciously regard Ethan as his possession. What they needed now, Ethan mused, was a conflict substantial enough to ignite true passion. He needed to ensure Jackson remained captivated, as interesting as Jackson himself had found Ethan. The opportunity soon arrived at a corporate reception. Ethan was engaged in a lively discussion with an alpha client, a long-term collaborator. They were discussing future market trends. The client was a respected industry leader, insightful and sharp. Perhaps their conversation had lasted too long, or perhaps the camaraderie between them had grown too comfortable, because Jackson approached, a drink in hand, and seamlessly inserted himself. He casually draped an arm around Ethan's waist, subtly pulling him closer. Jackson asked what they were discussing so animatedly. His tone and actions clearly betrayed his displeasure at the perceived encroachment on his claim. The hand resting on Ethan's waist felt distinctly warm. The client, keenly aware of Jackson's thinly veiled irritation, exchanged a few polite pleasantries and quickly departed. Only Ethan and Jackson remained on the terrace, the previously animated atmosphere cooling into a palpable tension. Ethan gently disengaged from Jackson's arm, stepping back a few paces, creating a deliberate distance between them. He purposefully used a formal address, reminding Jackson to maintain decorum in a public setting. Jackson's smile vanished. He clearly hadn't anticipated such a reaction from Ethan. Perhaps he viewed his actions as a natural protective display, a declaration of ownership. He was, in his mind, simply asserting his claim. Jackson frowned, remarking on the other alpha's gaze, stating he didn't appreciate it. Ethan fully understood Jackson's resentment. He had already mentally staked his claim, presuming ownership, and any external interest felt like an affront. Ethan addressed Jackson by his full name once more, demanding to know in what capacity Jackson was expressing his displeasure. Jackson seemed momentarily stunned by the rebuttal, unsure how to respond. Ethan didn't wait. He continued, asking if Jackson was acting as a superior, dictating an employee's private social interactions, or if he was interfering with the freedom of his future possession as a suitor. Jackson's face darkened. He had likely never experienced such open defiance from an Omega. The air around them grew heavy. He even unconsciously released a subtle wave of his pheromones, a potent, oppressive force. A typical Omega would have likely buckled, trembling and perhaps entering heat. Ethan, however, was not typical. "Pull back your pheromones, Jackson," Ethan stated, even advancing a few steps towards him, meeting Jackson's confused gaze head-on. "That won't work on me." Jackson's eyes were wide with genuine bewilderment. In his understanding, an Omega simply couldn't remain so composed under his dominant scent. Jackson, agitated, tightened his grip on Ethan's wrist. He demanded to know how Ethan could respond with such an attitude after all Jackson had done for him. He started to say that a true Omega should be. Ethan cut him off, completing the sentence with a pointed emphasis. Submissive? Obedient? Should they rely on an alpha's mark and protection? He looked directly at Jackson. "Jackson, is it me you truly desire, or merely the idealized shadow of an Omega you've constructed in your mind, conforming to an alpha's expectations?" The words pierced through Jackson's carefully maintained facade. No matter how gentlemanly he presented himself, his ingrained Omega stereotypes and inherent desire for control, perhaps an alpha's innate flaw, were undeniable. They could never truly see as equals those they deemed subservient. Jackson's grip loosened. His composure shattered, replaced by an offended fury, and beneath that, a profound bewilderment. "The shadow in my mind?" Jackson repeated, almost to himself, as if hearing an absurd accusation for the first time. He asked if everything he had done for Ethan was, in Ethan's eyes, merely an alpha's instinct. Ethan remained silent, simply observing him, allowing the quiet tension to stretch between them. Finally, Ethan gently withdrew his hand, smoothing the cuff of his shirt. He suggested that Jackson needed time to think. He turned to leave, his parting words echoing, "Come find me when you've figured it out." Ethan didn't look back, but he felt Jackson's gaze on his retreating form, scorching and insistent. It was good. He had successfully shattered their fragile truce, forcing Jackson to confront his preconceptions. Ethan never wanted Jackson's protection or possessiveness stemming from the Omega label. Their dynamic wasn't the standard Alpha-Omega script of conquest and reliance. Ethan needed Jackson to see him beyond that label, to fall for the true Ethan, stripped of all assumptions and illusions. Only then could they have a genuine future. Only then, when his Enigma identity inevitably came to light, would Jackson's affection not crumble. He needed Jackson to realize that his love, from the very beginning, was for Ethan himself, irrespective of whether he was an Omega, a Beta, or an Enigma. And if, in this complex game, Jackson chose to retreat, Ethan had no intention of letting him go. Jackson had ignited this fire, and he wouldn't be allowed to simply walk away. This game, initiated by Jackson, would end on Ethan's terms. After the confrontation on the terrace, Jackson disappeared for 3 days. No calls, no messages, no sightings at the company. This was precisely what Ethan had anticipated. A hunter whose authority had been challenged needed time to regroup, to reevaluate his perceived prey. On the 4th day, Jackson returned. He appeared unchanged, impeccable in his suit, concise in meetings, decisive in his judgments. Yet, his gaze upon Ethan had shifted. It no longer held that playful, possessive certainty. Now, stripped of its previous filter, his stare was acutely analytical. He no longer sent ostentatious roses or invited Ethan to overly elaborate restaurants. He rarely even approached him directly. Jackson had chosen an entirely new method of pursuit: competition. A proposal that should have sailed through easily would be met with a counterproposal, directly challenging Ethan's ideas in meetings. Jackson meticulously scrutinized every one of Ethan's conclusions with almost unforgiving standards. He was testing, proving whether Ethan genuinely possessed the intellect and strength to stand as his equal, or if he was merely a decorative figure benefiting from an Omega designation. Ethan, for his part, gladly accepted the challenge. They debated late into the night in conference rooms. Ethan repeatedly highlighted flaws in Jackson's logic, driving his proposals into dead ends with superior solutions. They clashed, yet with each exchange, Jackson's eyes grew brighter. The spark in his gaze was no longer the amusement of a hunter finding intriguing prey, but the exhilaration of a true match. Gradually, Jackson became the first to applaud when Ethan secured a difficult client. During another late-night meeting, he would discreetly place a glass of water, perfectly tempered, beside Ethan. No words were exchanged, yet his actions clearly signaled a redefined relationship. After work, Ethan often found himself accepting a ride in Jackson's car. They would sit in comfortable silence, a new kind of quietude replacing the initial tension and subtle tests. This peaceful understanding flowed between them, unspoken yet deeply felt. Occasionally, Ethan felt Jackson's gaze on him, no longer appraising, but confirming Ethan's presence beside him. They had become companions, sharing a quiet journey home after fighting side by side. Ethan distinctly felt Jackson slowly separating him from the image of a vulnerable Omega needing protection, placing him instead on an entirely new and respected footing. Ethan relished this evolution. He knew that only when Ethan himself held significant weight in Jackson's heart could Jackson truly confront Ethan's actual nature. Without genuine affection, no alpha, born to lead, would willingly yield to another. Everything progressed smoothly until one weekend. Ethan had gone to Jackson's apartment for an urgent document. With their business concluded, Jackson stood to fetch water. As Ethan admired the sunset painting the sky with hues of rose and crimson outside the window, the glass in Jackson's hand abruptly slipped, splashing water onto the plush rug. Ethan turned. Jackson was gripping the edge of the kitchen island, his knuckles white from the strain. His breathing grew heavy and ragged, unmistakable in the quiet apartment. Even the carefully controlled citrus pheromones he usually contained so well now erupted like a wild, untamed force, flooding every corner of the room. Ethan immediately recognized the signs. Jackson was entering his rut. Ethan rose and slowly approached him. Jackson had his back turned, every muscle in his body taut. He was battling his most primal instincts, perhaps unwilling to display his desire-driven state to Ethan. Jackson's voice was hoarse, strained with suppression, urging Ethan to leave. Ethan didn't move. In Jackson's unrestrained state, Ethan clearly detected the scent of his pheromones. Like peeling a firm, slightly unripe orange, the tart, sharp aroma bursting forth. "Jackson," Ethan called, aiming to penetrate the haze clouding his mind. As if summoned, Jackson turned. His eyes were bloodshot, his rationality consumed by primal urge, leaving only the raw instinct to claim. The moment before Jackson surged forward, driven by instinct, Ethan reached out, his hand touching the scorching skin of Jackson's neck. The swollen gland beneath his fingers pulsed, signaling the alpha's impending agitated state. Ethan no longer suppressed his own aura, allowing his Enigma pheromones to unfurl. Unlike an omega's soothing scent that would calm an alpha's frenzy, Ethan's essence asserted a forceful, undeniable dominance. Jackson's previously restless pheromones faltered, then ceased their aggressive assault. They softened, beginning to intertwine with Ethan's, like lost lambs seeking the guidance of a stronger presence. Jackson froze, rigid. His wild pheromones, overwhelmed by this undeniable power, became docile, compelling him to shift from a possessive instinct to an overwhelming desire for subjugation. This completely shattered everything Jackson, as an alpha, knew about himself. Ethan put an arm around Jackson's waist, applying a gentle pressure, offering stable support. Jackson leaned into him, his full weight coming to rest against Ethan. The usually imposing alpha seemed to possess a rare fragility in that moment. Jackson looked at Ethan, as if at an incomprehensible entity, asking what he had done. Ethan didn't answer. Instead, he gently kissed the burning skin of Jackson's nape. Jackson's body shuddered violently, a mixture of resistance and a visceral tremor before an absolute master. Ethan simply murmured for him to be quiet. After a moment, Jackson, surprisingly, stopped questioning. His fevered forehead rested limply in the crook of Ethan's neck. Ethan could feel the rapid cadence of his breath against his skin. Half supporting, half carrying him, Ethan guided Jackson to the sofa. Jackson almost collapsed onto it, his body still trembling slightly from the aftershocks of the rut. Yet his eyes remained fixed on Ethan. Ethan knelt by the sofa, leaning over him, casting his shadow over Jackson, forcing him to look up. Ethan's fingertips again traced the hot gland on Jackson's neck, the alpha's most vulnerable and sensitive spot. He clearly saw Jackson's throat involuntarily bob. He was afraid. Yet, the citrus pheromones still clung to Ethan, expressing a yearning for submission. Ethan lowered his head, his lips once more pressing against the rapidly pulsing gland. Jackson, in a rare display of vulnerability, was held within Ethan's embrace. It felt as though, if Ethan wished, he could mark him then, securing his ultimate surrender. Jackson let out a muffled, almost whimpering groan. His previously rigid body, succumbing to this primal yearning, went completely limp in Ethan's arms. He closed his eyes, his long lashes trembling violently, like a wild beast finally exposing its soft underbelly to its predator. In the end, Ethan withheld the final mark. It was too soon. He sought Jackson's willing submission, not one compelled by an Enigma's absolute power. When Ethan finally lifted his head, Jackson's eyes remained closed, his chest heaving as if he had expended every ounce of strength. The tart citrus scent in the air hadn't entirely dissipated, but it was no longer aggressive. Instead, it clung to Ethan, imbued with a rare affection. Ethan straightened, watching him in silence. Jackson remained still, curled away, as if reconstructing his worldview or retreating into himself. Ethan poured a glass of warm water and placed it on the coffee table beside him. The gentle clink of the glass made Jackson stir slightly. Ethan asked if he was all right. Jackson remained silent for a long time, so long that Ethan thought he wouldn't speak again. Jackson finally asked what Ethan had done to him, his focus on the somewhat humiliating experience of submission. Ethan subtly deflected the question, tossing it back to him as he sat beside him. Perhaps the proximity caused it, but Jackson finally turned to face him. His face was still pale, but the redness in his eyes had receded, replaced by a lucid fear. Perhaps he hadn't fully grasped it himself, or was unwilling to admit this instinctive, profound terror. "My pheromones," Jackson began, his gaze fixed on Ethan, each word articulated slowly, as if difficult to speak. "They obeyed you." For a dominant alpha, this was a humiliation far greater than any physical assault. His lifelong pride had just betrayed him, demonstrating an undeniable submission to Ethan. Ethan attempted to explain that his pheromones had simply responded to a more powerful force. It was instinct, like water flowing downhill. The word instinct seemed to sting him. Jackson straightened abruptly, staring at Ethan. An alpha's instinct, he argued, was to conquer, to dominate and possess, not to be like that. He trailed off, unable to articulate the craving for subjugation and the almost complete surrender he had felt. Jackson looked up at Ethan, a flicker of vulnerability in his eyes, as if realizing for the first time the stark power imbalance between them. He lowered his voice, asking if Ethan had been toying with him from the start, watching him, a narrow-minded alpha, chase after him like a fool. Ethan firmly denied his self-deprecating assumption. He declared his affection for Jackson, for every authentic facet he had revealed, irrespective of designation. He loved Jackson simply for being Jackson. Ethan once again sensed Jackson's foundational beliefs wavering. He pointed to the water on the table, advising Jackson to rest. He didn't press further, rising to leave. Jackson needed space to process the unsettling emotions Ethan had stirred. As Ethan reached the door, Jackson's voice called out again. Ethan paused, not turning around. Jackson's voice was laced with exhaustion, but more profoundly, with a stubborn determination not to yield. He would figure Ethan out, figure everything out. Good, Ethan thought. This was precisely what he wanted. As he opened the door, the night was serene, the moonlight beautiful. He knew Jackson had chosen, at that very moment, to actively seek the truth, a decision far more valuable than simply forcing him to accept it. Perhaps it was the impending rut that made Jackson distance himself. The aftermath of their intense encounter, combined with the approaching rut, had plunged him into unprecedented disarray. Jackson stopped actively seeking Ethan's company, even deliberately avoiding his gaze during meetings. Occasionally, when they passed in the office, he would stiffen, every muscle tensing, as if evading something monstrous. But Ethan knew Jackson would eventually gravitate towards him. The primal attraction had already planted a seed during Jackson's most vulnerable moment, making Ethan's presence irresistible. The next eruption occurred late one night after extra hours. Ethan was preparing to leave when he heard muffled, strained breathing coming from Jackson's office. He pushed the door open. Jackson was hunched over his desk, his back slightly curved, clearly in significant discomfort. The air was thick with an uncontrolled citrus scent, laden with agitation and an ineffable vulnerability. Hearing the door, Jackson snapped his head up. In the harsh office light, Ethan clearly saw the thin red rimming Jackson's eyes, his forehead damp with sweat. Jackson's gaze was wary, defensive, yet within it, Ethan perceived a plea for help, perhaps even unrecognized by Jackson himself. "Don't come closer," Jackson rasped, his voice hoarse, a devoid of true conviction due to its instability. Ethan, of course, ignored him. As he approached, Jackson's body grew even tighter, stretched to its absolute limit. It felt as though another step might cause him to completely shatter or explode. Ethan stopped just a step away. His no longer restrained pheromones diffused, enveloping Jackson, like the claiming scent of ownership. Sensing the aura, Jackson bit down hard on his lower lip, as if resisting, yet his own pheromones, his primal instincts, honestly expressed a deep yearning to draw closer. The previously agitated scent once again calmed under Ethan's influence. The air seemed to thicken. Two distinct pheromones that should have clashed now intertwined around Ethan. His voice, too, became slightly husky. "You see?" Ethan murmured. "You desire." "Is it me?" Jackson's voice was hoarse, tinged with a helplessness at events spiraling beyond his control. Ethan knew Jackson wanted to ask why he, of all people, had to endure the torment of having all his long-held perceptions utterly shattered. Because Ethan replied softly, "Only you are worth this much effort from me." In that moment, the eyes that usually held such pride were filled only with raw vulnerability and confusion. Ethan's gaze slowly drifted downward to Jackson's lips, reddened from his struggle. Under the intoxicating influence of the pheromones, Jackson leaned forward slightly. The movement was almost imperceptible, yet Ethan immediately understood its meaning. Jackson was silently asking for a kiss. This signified that his previously formidable defenses had finally fractured under the dual pressure of physiological urges and psychological strain. Ethan remained still, waiting for Jackson to be drawn closer by instinct. "Take me with you," Jackson finally whispered after a brief kiss, extending his hand. It was the first time he had actively sought help from Ethan, the first time he had consciously yielded to his primal instincts to approach. Ethan didn't immediately respond. He simply looked at Jackson's lips, flushed from the kiss. "Ethan, take me with you," Jackson repeated, his voice firmer now. Ethan finally took his outstretched hand. The moment their skin touched, he felt Jackson's fingertips curl slightly in his palm. Ethan closed his fingers around Jackson's hand, intending to convey a profound sense of security. Ethan didn't take Jackson back to his own apartment but brought him home to his. The fragility of his rut stripped Jackson of all societal identity, leaving only raw dependence. Jackson looked up at Ethan, asking if he would stay, a vulnerability in his voice that was utterly uncharacteristic. Of course, Ethan replied, sitting beside him. "I will accept all of you." Jackson fell silent, then did something entirely unexpected. He didn't seek an embrace or any more intimate contact. Instead, with an almost sacrificial solemnity, he turned his head, exposing the burning gland on the back of his neck fully to Ethan's sight. For an alpha, this gesture was the complete, unreserved surrender of his most vulnerable, inviolable point. He murmured into Ethan's neck, stating that it felt uncomfortable there. It was a clumsy excuse, but they both understood. This was not a plea for help, but an indirect, yet absolute permission and invitation. Jackson was actively inviting Ethan to complete the mark that had been left unfinished. The realization quickened Ethan's breath. The exposed gland pulsed gently with Jackson's breathing. He was like a swan offering its neck to be taken. Finally, Ethan slowly leaned down, his lips and teeth pressing against the hot, throbbing skin. The mere touch made Jackson shudder violently, a broken whimper escaping his throat. In that instant, Ethan no longer held back. His pheromones, as if finding their long-awaited passage, flowed gently yet irresistibly with the symbolic act of marking, slowly infusing Jackson's gland. Jackson's fingertips helplessly clutched at Ethan's collar, his body arching uncontrollably, a soft groan escaping his throat as if he could no longer bear it. The crisp citrus scent, which had defined him as an alpha, trembled and rejoiced as Ethan's essence permeated it, beginning its final integration and transformation. The process seemed to last an eternity. When Ethan finally lifted his head, Jackson lay limp on the sofa, as if all his strength had been drained. Only his chest still heaved violently. A clear bite mark was visible on the back of his neck, the surrounding skin flushed with an intimate redness, testament to what had just occurred. Jackson lifted his still trembling hand, gently touching the mark on his neck. The burning sensation made him recoil quickly, as if burned. He looked at Ethan, a strange sense of satisfaction in his voice. "Now I belong to you." "No," Ethan corrected him gently. "You will always belong to yourself. But now we are both complete." An Enigma's mark was never about creating a subservient follower, but about finding each other's anchor. Ethan squeezed Jackson's still trembling fingers. "Sleep," he murmured. "I'm here with you." During his first heat after the gender shift, Jackson became incredibly clingy. When Ethan opened the bedroom door, he almost thought he had entered the wrong room. The air was thick with a mature, rounded citrus pheromone, vastly different from its previous sharp, green notes. Ethan gently disentangled Jackson from the makeshift mountain of his clothes, revealing the essence of him. Jackson looked up, his eyes moist and filled with a mixture of longing and unease. He whimpered that Ethan had returned. Jackson tried to get off the bed and rush towards Ethan but stumbled back down due to the intense heat of his condition. He simply stated he was uncomfortable. Ethan knelt before him, meeting his gaze directly. Jackson nodded vigorously, looking utterly distressed. He instinctively tried to burrow into Ethan's embrace, his heated cheek rubbing against Ethan's neck, seeking the calming influence of his pheromones. He murmured that he was hot, struggling to describe the unfamiliar torment of his heat. Even his usually authoritative voice was tinged with a desperate sob, begging Ethan not to leave. Ethan held Jackson close. Jackson's body was feverish but surprisingly pliant, pressing tightly against him, seeking solace. The gland on his neck was shockingly hot. The pervasive pheromones grew thick and sweet, constantly relaying his discomfort. The unfamiliar tide of sensations overwhelmed him. The slightest touch made him shudder. He buried his head deeper into Ethan's neck, as if trying to hide from the strange pleasure. Yet Ethan knew it wasn't rejection, but a deeper craving. "Jackson," Ethan whispered into his neck. Jackson responded with a soft murmur, his arms around Ethan's waist tightening further, as if they were meant to be inextricably linked, unwilling to be separated even for a moment. Ethan, still holding Jackson, surveyed the chaotic state of the room. The bed was piled high with his clothes. He half suspected Jackson had emptied his entire wardrobe to construct this comforting nest. When Ethan tried to loosen his hold to tidy the bed, Jackson would let out an anxious whimper until Ethan clasped his hand again or offered a brief hug. Only then would he quieten, staring at Ethan with wide, glistening eyes. Ethan abandoned the idea of cleaning up. Jackson squeezed Ethan's fingers, pleading for him to join him. In this state, Jackson had shed all societal expectations of strength and pride, openly expressing his innermost thoughts with a candor that melted Ethan's heart. Ethan quickly changed into loungewear and joined him in the makeshift nest to weather Jackson's first heat since his transformation. The moment Ethan got into bed, Jackson clung to him like an octopus, wrapping his arms and legs around him, pressing his feverish cheek against Ethan's collarbone, a touch that made Ethan's heart ache with tenderness. Ethan easily caught Jackson's contented sigh, as if he had finally recovered a missing part of himself, becoming whole again. Jackson murmured that he felt much better. Ethan gently stroked his curled back. Soothed by Ethan's pheromones, Jackson finally relaxed, his taut body softening in Ethan's embrace. In this temporary haven, saturated with Ethan's scent, Jackson, his once formidable rival, his long secret crush now revealed his true vulnerability and complete reliance. And Ethan, realizing Jackson's vulnerability and honesty were born of him, felt a profound, almost selfish joy. If only time could freeze in this moment. At least for now, happiness felt eternal.